Hei og velkommen igjen til andre sesong av Akk Oy Vey Jødepodden, her hvor jeg, Nina Grünfeldt, sammen med gjester og venner snakker om livet og andre aktualiteter, men sett med et jødisk skråblikk. I våres snakket jeg med norsk-israelske psykiater Rami Aronzon om refusniks og kampen for å hjelpe jøder ut av Sovjet på 1970- og 80-tallet. Du kan høre den samtalen i episode nummer 2. Nå er Rami tilbake i Norge med datteren og filmskaperen Michal, og i denne episoden snakker vi om deres israelske tilhørighet og ulikhetene hos de ulike generasjonene. Og i neste episode, som kommer om en uke, så snakker vi videre om blant annet rekonstruksjon i film og det å gå i psykoanalyse. Samtalen er på engelsk. I had you, Rami, on this pod talking about the refusniks. And we're going to talk in English because you're back here talking to me together with your daughter Michal. Mm-hmm. And even though Michal is kind of half Norwegian, we'll come back to that. You don't speak Norwegian.
Not good enough to enjoy a conversation.
So welcome to both of you, Rami and
Thank
Michal.
you.
Rami, 2 words. Who are you?
2 words.
Yeah. Okay, 3.
I was born in Finland, which I left when I was 1 year old. And I was a child in Sweden. And I came to Norway when I was 6. My father was a rabbi of the Jewish community in Norway, and he was all his life on the way to Israel. And in 1959, he managed to realize his, I wouldn't even call it dream, I would call it his road, in a way. So we all left for Israel. And he wanted to settle in a kibbutz, which we did. And after 2 years in the kibbutz and finishing high school there, but they did not allow to go to study, I returned to Norway to study medicine. And after having graduated and been up in the north for a year as a doctor, I left for Jerusalem and lived there since. By profession, I'm a psychiatrist and psychoanalyst, and I spent most of my summer holidays during all these years going up to northern Norway and work as a general practitioner, as a kommunelegevikar, which is quite a central part of my identity, actually. I think that's it, more or less, and who I am. Basically, I'm Jewish, first of all.
In the couch beside you, Rami, is your daughter Michal, who I've been looking forward to meet. So, Michal, who are you?
Okay, who am I? Well, I was born and raised in Jerusalem to a Norwegian father and an Iranian mother. I was raised in, you could say it's a religious school, but it's like more of, we prayed every morning. Yeah, and then when I turned 18, like most Israelis, I went to the military. And after that, I decided I want to try and see how it feels to be in Oslo for a while. So I came to Oslo with my sister, Shira, and we stayed here. I mean, I stayed here for a short while. I was working a little bit. I met a boyfriend here, and I decided I want to go to travel to India. And my sister stayed in Norway, and she found herself here and studied here nursing, and she's still living here and raising her daughter. After studying 2 years of Jewish philosophy, I understood that, okay, I'm meeting all these beautiful texts and beautiful thoughts, but I really want to put them into some kind of a vessel, which meant for me, film would be a good thing to put it into.
So you're a filmmaker.
Filmmaker, yeah.
You're like me. We're colleagues.
We're colleagues, yes.
Yeah. And are you working on anything currently? Any film projects as we speak?
Well, I finished a really big project that took me about 7 years, a documentary film called The Little Things.
What is it about?
The narrative is about a meeting between me and Jøder, who is a settler a Jewish Orthodox settler. He is the youngest son of Rabbi Fruman.
What was it like to screen it for a Norwegian audience?
It was surprisingly very interesting, and I'm saying surprisingly because I thought that maybe it's a film that only Jewish people could relate to, because it's very, in a way, niche. It tells a story about a family, a certain type of Judaism, kind of a sect, you could say. It portrays this type of Judaism in a meeting with my kind of way of being Jewish, of a more secular Tel Avivian way. It's a meeting. So for me, it was very surprising to see that Norwegians that are not Jewish, they don't know about this kind of orthodoxy. They were really fascinated and found meaning in it. And
were there lots of questions after the screening?
Yes, they were.
That's a good sign, because Norwegians don't often ask questions in public.
Yeah. Interesting questions as well.
And then you just told me about a project that you are running, which I found very interesting. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a project. It actually was kind of born from the documentary film that I made. I'll just tell a little bit. The documentary that I made is made out of scenes that are basically exercises in film. The relationship between this student, Yudale, and me was so that he came to study film and I gave him exercises, and every week he would come back with footage of different themes that I would send him to kind of shoot, and then we would talk about it. And the film was made out of this process of studying film. So the film also shows us a process of how to learn film, basically. So the project that I'm doing now is a project with Palestinian young artists, women, female, from the age of 22 to 29, that are coming from different places in Israel, different villages, one from al-Fahim, one from Kfar Kana, one from Taibe, different places.
Are we talking about also on the West Bank, or are they all from the west side of the wall? Is it like they have to travel through checkpoints in order to come to your...
No, they don't have to travel through checkpoints.
They are Israeli Palestinians.
They are Israeli Palestinians, Muslim. So they travel once a week to Tel Aviv, to my house. We meet up in my living room. In these meetings, we talk, we meet.
What do you talk about?
I try to hear about their lives, because it is very different, of course, in my life. The women in Palestinian society, they live very differently than the way I do.
Why did you start the initiative?
Because I had another project with teenagers, and that was very meaningful to me. And so I thought, this is something that I really love doing. This is a way I love to meet, because, you can have all these opinions about how coexistence should be, and then if you don't really meet and talk and eat together and make film together or watch film together, for me that's the way to meet.
So is it the thing about learning to know each other, or is it teaching them how to tell their own stories, or... What is the most important thing, would you say? It's
both, but I am their mentor, their teacher. They did not learn film for that. So they come to learn how to make film. And so I use the same technique as I did. I give a theme for the meeting, like, for example, the theme of home. We talk about what is a home, what it means for everyone, what it is to feel at home, what it is to feel comfortable. And then they go back with an exercise. For example, there was an exercise of shooting 3 minutes, one take, underneath this theme, home.
They film with their iPhones, or?
Yeah, some of them with their iPhones and some have cameras. Mm-hmm. And they bring it back, and it's incredible expression.
And is the goal that this should end up in a concrete film, or is it more the process?
It started up as a process, but then the Israeli Film Foundation, which are the supporters of this project, they saw that there's really interesting footage, interesting material that these women are bringing, and they have voices that we did not see. We don't see that, definitely not on Israeli television, but I also don't see these kind of things, even Netflix, these are really unique voices. Mm-hmm. Also the way, in the form of making, and also in the content. Mm. So, and what they have to say about femininity and their culture and dreams.
What language do you talk when you meet?
That's a really good question, the language. So, unfortunately, I'm ashamed and embarrassed that I don't speak Arabic. I don't speak it in a way that I could teach in it, definitely. But they speak very good Hebrew. They live in an Israeli society. And to make films, to put up your voice, you have to know the language. They work very hard. They learn the language. They speak it beautifully. They write in Hebrew.
Do they accept you as a mentor, not being able to mentoring them in their own language?
That's a good question. Part of the process is emun, building this type of trust of
mutuality.
Yeah, building mutuality between us. And even though we're not equal in our rights, as Israelis we are, but in reality we are not. The way I see teaching also. They are also teachers to me. The teacher and the student, it's this dance that changes, and also with directing. In English, I think it's a very good word because it's to give direction, It's just to give a direction.
So Rami, you are Michal's father and you're a psychiatrist. And now I want you to be more professional than personal. Why is a 40-year-old Israeli Jewish woman doing this, teaching young Palestinian Israeli women to express themselves in the audiovisual tools which film is?
There are different ways of react. There is a way of reacting which is, being afraid of the other one and demonizing the other one, and there is a way of reacting of being curious about the other one. There is a way of reacting of not so much maybe being curious, but just wanting to get to know more of the other one. You have the whole spectrum found with different people. There is nothing in Israel which is not complex. There is no really one answer to anything, actually. When I have to start with Adam and Eve, with everything. Specifically with Michal, I think that you first of all have a great curiosity. I also think that you're a people's person. I mean, it's not only that specific group of people, you also have it to other groups of people. And you have been, in many ways, living on the in and out, on the boundaries between different groups in Israel. You have been brought up not Orthodox, not religious, but certainly it was very important for me that you should have a knowledge of Jewish culture and background, so you have been into that. You have family who's very Orthodox, you have family who is completely non, you have family who is not Jewish, and you are in and out in this, and they're just people who get close to. So I don't think you are a person who fits into kind of one box. I think that there is something. And I think that the meeting with the youngsters in Jisr Azarka was an opener to you for what kind of problem these youngsters really struggle with in families which are not allowing them, to be out in the world again. I don't think it is typical, but I think that you have in many different fields, you have projects like this. If I see, for instance, in my field, let's say psychoanalysis and psychotherapy, we have courses of psychotherapy with Palestinian students. And not segregated from, but we try to get in as many as possible because there is a need for that population for help, for being able to get professional help. But again, it's not mainstream. And I also think it's the only way one could go on living and having some kind of a way of hope to not be stuck in this very petrified situation which has developed in the area. Mm-hmm. And again, that is also, a picture with multi-dimension because you have a completely frozen political situation. But among people, you have a lot of interaction. Mm-hmm. A lot of interaction in daily life and in work and so on and so on. Maybe less in Tel Aviv.
It depends how bubblish you are. How much
depends how bubblish you are.
Inside the bubble you are, or how much you are willing to kind of go out of your...
Yeah. So does Israelis today feel like perpetrators? Is that an element to why you are doing this? And I guess you as Israelis, Jewish Israelis, can feel that maybe even more than me, I am becoming more and more the oppressor, the perpetrator. And what does that do to me, to us? Are we or are we not?
There is a huge difference between discrimination, which you can find a lot of in Oslo or in Norway, wherever. There's a huge difference between discrimination and apartheid. Apartheid is a system. If I go to the swimming pool, to the workout room at the university, usually about 2/3 of the people I'm sitting in the sauna with or I'm working out with are from the old city. Palestinians. They speak usually Arabic, which I don't understand. I've very often been sitting in the sauna where I don't understand the word because I speak Arabic and it's bad. I shouldn't. And I don't feel any tension between us. And there isn't really. I know that in days of, let's say, like Ramadan now, and when everything is very tense and all the extreme on both sides are doing their best to get an explosion on the Temple Mount. On days like that, I should not go to certain areas because somebody may just attack me. But in general, I don't have any problem with it. It's not apartheid if you are treated by nurses and doctors from the other group, or if you go to the sauna with them, or if you meet them everywhere and do things together. There is a lot of discrimination. I don't say there is not.
They would claim is that you divide between official and unofficial apartheid. You know, that the result of the politics in Israel is that people don't have equal opportunities, don't have equal rights, don't move freely,
There is no freedom, complete freedom of movement when it comes to the West Bank, which is not a part of Israel, as I see it. And there is,
but
and
which
also
Israel wants to become a part of Israel.
No, some political
Israelis.
party would like that, but at the moment they are not ruling. In the former government, they were not ruling, but they had much more to say, and they may unfortunately be back. So there are political tensions in every way. But then it has not been annexed, except for Jerusalem. And Jerusalem is a specific story, and it's another story. Really, there is a conflict. In that conflict, there is a lot of violence. It doesn't lead to anywhere to start say who started this, and that's a child that you throw the ball first and so on. That doesn't lead anywhere. But one cannot really expect that anybody should be willing to commit suicide except the suicider.
Yeah, but you could say that he has nothing to lose. And
the suicider has nothing to lose. That it's okay. I mean, the suicide will not. I'm not willing to accept that somebody should say that I should be willing to suicide just by not being careful. It's like the story, I had this some days ago. I talked with her over the phone, and she asked, well, what happens? I told her, well, it's a lot of unrest at the moment. There were 2 guys who shot 4 people in the street yesterday evening, and son and son said, were they arrested? So I said, are you crazy?
They were killed.
They were killed.
Yeah.
They were killed. Of course they were killed. One of them while being killed, he killed the policeman. When they were shooting at each other. Mm. The policeman was also killed.
It's only Norway where we arrest terrorists. Or
you can't arrest a guy who has an M16 and is shooting wildly. He shot a guy.
They did on Utøya.
But that guy wanted to be arrested. He didn't shoot at the police. People who came to arrest him.
That's true. I think that's interesting from a Norwegian point of view. Even after Utøya, we claim, that in a good society, and it's healing for the collectiveness, that people are being arrested and that they have a fair trial and all that stuff. In France, for instance, whenever there is a terror attack, that's my theory, is that whenever the police order is to shoot the terrorist in the leg, it means between the eyes. Because there is never a French terrorist that survives. They're killed. So what is it like being Israelis visiting Norway?
Yeah.
Do you tell where you come from, or do you people ask?
It's really weird, I have to say about it, because it's funny, because on the way here, and then maybe it's, I don't know if it should be, but on the way here I said, well, I don't know if I really want to be recorded in these kind of issues. That's the thing, because I don't want, you're doing like this with your head, and I
You are you.
Yeah, but I mean, it's
There's some years since you started being independent.
We have different ways of seeing it, and maybe it's a generational thing. I don't know, but I feel I don't see eye to eye with you in the matter of Zionism. I mean, for you it was a dream, and you did everything to come to Israel, and to Zionism is a value. And for me, you could say many things, maybe because I was privileged to have Israel, to be born into this country that was made, and etc. But I feel I was brought into something very wounded, something which is not right in the way it was made, something that was made in a wrong way. I mean, wrong is maybe...
So what did you say then?
I say I'm from Israel. I'm from Israel. But I apologize, I feel I say it apologetically. It's a tension, it's a place that is filled with tension. Many wrong things are happening, and violence, but there is a meeting, there is a friction, there is a meeting. Yes, sometimes there's a touch. And I feel about Norway, when I'm here, every time I tell my father, it's so beautiful here, and it's so calm, and I love it, and maybe I should, it's easy and comfortable. And
we are so privileged to be born into this very fresh-aired country in the far up north, actually a part of the world where there's hardly any people at all. To me, you talked about going to India. I went to India like 10, 12 years ago, and that was really a game changer to me, because I suddenly really realized, I was a grown-up, but I realized that this is where people live. This is where the world is. And we live up here in the north, and we're so fortunate. We're so rich. We have all this water, all this air. And this is like kindergarten. And I remember so well you, Rami, last time we met, you said something which really I've been thinking about. We have the privilege of being kind because we don't live really in conflicts. No, but my point is that, none of us were asked to be born. You didn't ask to be born in Israel, with all the conflicts that comes with that. And of course, I find it very interesting what it's like being a woman, almost 40 years old, living in this world, having to deal with the fact that she's an Israeli.
A lot of people are working to do it different, to try it. And then Norway is marvelous. Norway is a holiday. I love Norway, but the whole Norway is a national park.
The whole of Norway?
The whole of Norway is a national park.
Yeah, it is.
For somebody coming in from abroad, it is really, and it's fantastic.
I tried to tell my husband, we were traveling up north in Tromsø and further south from there, and there was these huge areas, beautiful, green. Nobody's there, nobody. And I said, why don't we create a Zionistic state here? We'll move all the Jews from Israel to Norway, and they'll have half of our country, and we'll give the world peace as a gift.
It wouldn't work. Of course, it would have been better if Moses had walked here instead of to Canaan. I don't have no problem saying I'm from Israel, no whatsoever.
But I don't think, I can understand that you don't have a problem saying you're Israeli. In a way, you need to defend it maybe more than Michal.
In which way?
No, I think, you made a choice to go to Israel. Yeah. You could have stayed in Norway. Michal never had that choice.
I did a choice which cost a lot. It meant having a much more difficult life. It meant having a much less economic, viable life. And it meant giving up certain people. It meant breaking up with a girlfriend. It meant...
but it was at a time when the Jews and Israelis were heroes.
That did not influence the least. No, it had... And my connection to Israel has nothing to do with that. It had to do certainly with my father and my upbringing, and also with the 2 years in the kibbutz. Very much.
So you came back to Norway after 2 years in the kibbutz?
I never came back in order to stay, and that was a fight, not to wish to stay. That's true.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your version, Michal?
These words are words that I heard since I was born.
Which words?
These words that are about building a place such as Israel after the Holocaust, about having this big...
But you heard him talk many times about Norway or going back to Israel, or...
I've heard me talk a lot about Norway, and you also been with me many times.
Yeah,
in
every
Northern
summer
Norway.
since I was a child.
Do you feel Norwegian?
In some ways, I do. I do because I understand the language, and I have been many times på fjell with my father on the mountains, and every summer I think.
I've been on doctor boat in the north of Norway.
And in places that I think some Norwegians haven't been to, and I feel Norwegian in many ways.
Do you feel Persian as well?
Yes, I feel very Persian in many ways as well, too.
So you're Israeli, you're Persian, you're Norwegian, you're a lot of things.
Yes, and that goes back to the question you asked way before. Why would I do that? Why would I meet with this group of Palestinian women? What is behind it? And I immediately thought about the psychoanalytic reason that, my father is from Norway, my mother is from Iran. It's really, both different sides, East and West, you could say. Different languages, different mentality, different cultures. And I think very much in my life I was translating from Norwegian to Persian, from Persian to Norwegian. Not maybe literally, but there was this movement of connecting, of binding between different mindsets or different cultures. That was the feeling, So this is something very much in me, to very much want to a meeting between, different, to connect basically. And I think that's a thing that is very much happening in Israel, connection. Even if the connection is sometimes, I thought about this, what happened in Beersheba with the knife, with the
guy,
with the terrorist. Yeah, to kill someone with a knife, you have to really come very, very close to the person and look him in the eye, and it's kind of an intimate.
It's not shooting from afar.
Yeah, it's not from afar. You have to be really, really penetrate one another's body, and it's a very physical thing. And I feel many times in Israel that this kind of fighting, this friction, which is mostly violent, but not only. Sometimes it's a way of touching. It's like wrestling. That is, it's two people that are fighting but are actually touching all the time, There is a closeness. This closeness has many prices, and some are very horrible prices, but it is a contact. There is touch, there is a meeting between one and the other, and the enemy, And I think many times with discrimination, and many times, even I can say, even in Norway, that I think that maybe there is a preference of keeping distant from something that is very far from you, that is the other. In Israel, what I like, what I love is this, that people don't usually prefer the distance.
Okay, so if we were not to talk about politics, what do we talk about then?
We talk about politics.
This thing, what do we talk about when we talk about sex? There's this saying. So
don't talk about sex, you talk about sex.
That's right. If we don't talk about politics, we talk about sex, and there's nothing else to talk about. Love.
Well,
or even sex and love is politics.
You know what Sandemose said? He said there are only two things which are worthwhile writing about.
Who said this?
Sandemose.
Sandemose. Yeah. Politics and sex?
No. Sex and murder.
Sex and murder. Okay. Killing. Yeah. So it's life and death. Thanatos and eros, or something like that. Yeah. And in between there's a lot of politics. Takk for at du lytter til Akk Oy Vey Jødepodden. Denne samtalen med Rami og Michal, den fortsetter neste uke. Og om du liker denne podden, så kan du trykke abonner i din foretrukne spiller. Da vil du motta beskjed om når neste episode blir publisert. Og dersom du har spørsmål til Akk Oy Vey Jødepodden, eller vil bidra med innspill og ideer, send gjerne en mail til post@jødepodden.no. Akk Oy Vey Jødepodden er støttet av Stiftelsen Fritt Ord. Musikken du hører er komponert og arrangert av Jens Wendelboe.